Hello there, thanks for watching Talking Europe on France 24. I'm Catherine Nicholson. Now it is 25 years this year since one of the countries right at the heart of Europe split in two. This was no civil war, however, but an event dubbed the Velvet Revolution. It separated Czechoslovakia into two new states. A quarter century on, I'm very pleased to welcome the Europe Minister of Slovakia to our studios, Ivan Korcok. Thank you very much for being with us.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
Also currently acting foreign minister for your country as well.
That's right.
So very busy man, I'm sure. Well, let's take you first right back to 1993. Slovakia was quite in the Czech Republic's shadow, I think we can say, economically, in terms of decision-making. Even so, a majority of Slovaks were against the idea of splitting at the time of this velvet divorce. You were actually the foreign minister for Slovakia back then. What have these 25 years, do you think, brought to Slovakia? Was it what you expected?
I think it developed better than we expected, because I remember when I started my diplomatic career back then in '93, how difficult the beginning was. When I remember those days then that unlike in the Czech Republic, where structures were present because the former Czechoslovakia was governed from Prague, in Slovakia we had to start really from scratch. So I know where we were 25 years ago, and it has developed actually better. There were many hesitations connected with Slovakia at the beginning. We were the new ones on the scene, and we had to convince the international community that we are committed to democracy, that our ultimate goal was to become part of a family of European states in the European Union, at NATO, and we have managed. So I think those 25 years, when I look back, they were worthwhile. It was difficult. The journey itself was very difficult, but we know what we can appreciate today.
Well, like you say, it's that concept of creating a state, a real national identity as a separate country. Of course, as you say, Slovakia, a part of the European Union now. One of the smaller member states, a population of about 5.5 million people, right in the middle there, with so many neighbours landlocked. What do you see as Slovakia's place in Europe, its role in Europe?
Well, look, first, when we started in '93, our vision of becoming member, that was part of sort of emancipation. So that was very much connected also with our wish to have an independent state. Then we managed, and since then, since 2004, when Slovakia and other countries became members of the European Union, we are trying to contribute to European Union. So we not only want to profit, because we do profit from European Union, but we are trying to uphold this project, let me say, because if you look back, and not too many people realize that, in fact, since we joined in 2004, the European Union has been in a constant crisis management. So it's all successful, definitely. If you look at the economic figures, for example, at what high speed we are catching up with those countries which are more developed, it's a success story. But at the same time, it should not be underestimated that the picture that our people have been confronted with when we joined the European Union was a little bit different because of a difficult and very complicated decade that we have behind us, I hope.
Exactly, all those years of financial crisis. The European Union certainly seems to be in a state of flux at the moment. Lots of changes being talked about, conflicting propositions from different sides. I know that you're here in France to meet the French Europe Minister Nathalie Loiseau, talk about some of those future projects. Now, Slovakia is part of what we know as the Visegrad Group, Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, right in the middle there. Now, these countries, according to the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, want a say in a new blueprint for the EU. That sounds like it could be quite revolutionary change. What does that mean?
Well, let me share with you what we do mean in Slovakia. And I think the first main task and objective that we have is to deal with the consequences of a spiral of crisis that the European Union has been experiencing over the last 10 years.
Are we talking just financial or in other ways?
It's a financial crisis. It's let's don't forget the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Don't forget migration crisis. Don't forget the menace of terrorism. So there is a difficult legacy over the last that has developed over the last 10 years, and I think before we can start really thinking about a new vision and I'm not a friend of this type of approach to European Union's future, we need to deal with the consequences of what we have seen in the last 10 years. We cannot jump over and ignore that there are still problems in the Eurozone, which is not finished. We need to complete it. We need to uphold Schengen. Schengen does not work. And people, I don't think, expect from us at this moment to drag them and engage in a philosophical discussion about the European Union's future where we have diverging views. But people have to have absolute certainty that those situations that they have experienced over the last 10 years, when they had problems with their deposits in banks, they were scared, what's happening with their own currency. That must not happen again. So we in Slovakia are very pragmatic. We are not talking about a need to have a completely new blueprint. We don't think that the European Union has systemically failed over the last 10 years, but we need to do the remedy where it is most needed.
Because some of this could be seen as sort of an attack on Europe, especially from perhaps some of the older, longer-standing member states. Would you say then that this is actually an attempt to kind of galvanise Europe in a new direction? I think it was your Prime Minister, Robert Fico, who recently said that Visegrad states are being treated as black sheep. Are you saying you're actually trying to do some good for Europe?
Well, I was there when he said that. It was last week in Budapest when we had the Visegrad full meeting. And, this is a political communication, but there is something behind that. And I'm not the one as a diplomat who would like to escape or circumvent those questions. Yes, from time to time in recent years, we have seen situations where we were accused of not showing enough solidarity, especially when it comes to migration crisis. Yes, we have seen interpretations in the last years as if there was a East-West conflict in the European Union, which I don't share, because the fact that we have a firm position on something, be it the quota for relocation, which we do not share, that does not mean that it could be described as an East-West conflict in the European Union. And yes, Visegrad 4 countries this is a very effective platform for cooperation. We were noticed that we have firm positions, and very often through simplification we are labeled as the black sheep of a family. But we are pro-European, I want to stress.
All right, well, let's look at one of those subjects that you've mentioned that has definitely been mentioned a lot in relation to Slovakia and the Visegrad Group recently, migration. Migrants very much still arriving in Europe, as we know. We have a report actually from Calais in northern France. Take a look at this and then we'll discuss migration a little bit more after this report.
In Calais, a kind of game continues between migrants and local border officials, as law enforcement continue to meet attempts to illegally cross with force. As seen here, use of CS gas on young migrants by officers is common. Yet these youth are not to be dissuaded, as every day dozens of migrants attempt the crossing to England by trying to hide in vans.
I want to go to England. I got kicked out of Germany, where the police are on your back all the time. They just come and say, clear off. It's really hard there.
This young migrant had left Calais, only to return a couple of months later. Like him, nearly 550 migrants, many of whom children, made the same decision to return after Britain and France signed a new immigration agreement on January 18th. They hoped the way into Britain would now be easier. The reality was a disappointment.
There were many rumours that went round in migrant communities that were not addressed by local authorities. As a result, many migrants returned because they thought that it would be easier to cross into England. But that is not the case.
As their numbers continue to grow, these migrants have no shelter available or a place simply to eat. Some sleep in tents, which can be torn down at any moment. As more attention falls on these migrants following clashes with border officials, an already uncertain arrangement looks set to grow even more precarious.
There we are, an illustration of the ongoing migration situation here in Europe, impacting France, impacting many countries. If we come back to you, Ivan Korcok, Slovakian Europe Minister, your country's most prominently been in European news recently in relation to a challenge to the European migrant quotas. Your government mounted a legal challenge to that and lost that challenge. Have you started taking in migrants?
No, we have not, because we are not accepting a system which is based on mandatory quota. So that's the rationale why we are not participating on this. But more importantly, the main reason is that simply this system has proven to be ineffective. We have seen it over the last 2 years that in spite of establishment of a mandatory quota, people keep on coming to Europe, to Calais, as we have seen. At the same time, only 20-25% were relocated on the basis of the system. And the problem is also of a political nature, that because of this most ineffective system, we are divided in European Union. It does have political consequences. We say, while of course not denying the need for every country to participate on a system which has solidarity in itself, but we should focus on those instruments that work. And we have seen that we managed to stabilize the Western Balkan route, and we have, in cooperation with Turkey, closed this route. We regained control over the influx of migrants as we've seen them in 2015. We are not yet there in the Central Mediterranean route, where 10,000 of people, unfortunately, still risk their life, and they're coming from Libya or through Libya, mainly to Italy.
Well, these people, as we say, they are still here. They are still coming. Europe's founded on that. One of its founding principles is shared responsibility. We're all in it together. Somebody in Germany, perhaps, that's taken in more than 1 million in just 1 year, might well say, well, why should Slovakia or any other country try to opt out of something when we're all in it together?
I'll be very open. We could do that. We could do that, but we know, based on our long-term experience, one thing: those people do not want to come to Slovakia. I mean, politically, it would be for us much, much easier to say, all right, we agree to quota, we will take those 1,600 people to Slovakia, knowing that those people are gone in 2 weeks. I can give you one example. We have taken more than 100, 150 people and refugees actually from Syria. They were gone within 1 month. So we say that the system has to be established on a components when everyone can, on his or her own, contribute to the system, that it works all together. We are not denying solidarity, but we say, why should we accept quota knowing that those people will not want to stay in Slovakia in 2 weeks? They are anyway in Germany or in Austria or elsewhere. Instead, Slovakia commits in other forms, in disproportion.
Financing?
We're financing. We are, as a Visegrad 4, for example, we are financing a major project in Libya. We are temporarily
is that to fight people trafficking, or
yes,
are we talking about sort of camps for people who are there?
Establish control at the Libyan border, in the southern part, especially where there is a major migratory pressure. We are temporarily taking those who are seeking asylum from Austria, so that they are sheltered in Slovakia, and that exceeds much more the quota that was established for Slovakia. So I think the best way for Europe now would be to look really at the measures that work, and that's protection of external borders. That's really committing resources as we do it in Visegrad. But to try to say that once we establish mandatory quota, we are fine with that, this simply, the reality has proven that it has not worked as we have wished for.
All right, but let's look at some other foreign policy matters that impact all of Europe. Quite recently, there was a bit of a spat between Donald Trump and the EU, the US president criticising the European Union for what he called very, very unfair trade practices. Now, would you anticipate that there could actually be action from the US, some kind of restrictive trade measures? We're talking about 2 big trading blocs here.
Well, I think that would be to the detriment of the United States and to European Union. Altogether, we are the biggest trading bloc in the world. And the problem is that with the trade partnership that we wanted to establish between Europe and the United States, it's not only about eliminating the trade barriers and customs and all that. The choice was that this major trading bloc, those 2 democracies, we on our side of the Atlantic and the United States on the other, we had a huge opportunity to globally set standards for trade. And we have not used this opportunity. In Slovakia, we were supporters of that, but I don't think that it would be a right response to economic challenges, no doubt about that they are here, that they are present, would be that we would like to slow down or create further limits and obstacles for global trade. In Slovakia, we are a trading nation. 80% of our entire GDP is export, and we need to maintain open trading space.
Well, in that
in
sense,
Europe.
is it a worry then when Donald Trump starts saying things
Well,
like
it is worrying. Of course, it is worrying because we need a open economic and trade relations between the two sides, and then two of them will profit. It will push us for more competitiveness. So that should be our goal.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of our interview. Unfortunately, we have no more time, but thank you very much for coming in to see us. Ivan Korcok, Slovakia's acting foreign minister currently and Minister of European Affairs. Thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for watching this edition of Talking Europe. We'll see you very soon for more European news here on France 24.